Is he this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that people
Shout
running?
out to Wendy Williams.
This is the first time that I'm speaking about it. Something.
Gene Deal says he's living with a target on his back, and the name in the crosshays is Sean Diddy Combs. He swears it isn't paranoia when the shadows feel this heavy. Gene, once the enforcer who absorbed danger for Bad Boy, now finds himself dodging it. The man who used to shield others from bullets and convinces the one being hunted has spoken about the bribes, the subtle warnings, the menacing texts, and then the chilling recognition. It's not his silence thereafter, but his disappearance. At first, he says, they dangled money, assuming a payoff would smother the blaze he'd lit. When that failed, the threats grew bolder, almost careless in revealing their source. After the testimony is given in court and the stories is shared publicly, Gene believes...
In Hollywood, specifically, when you get there, a lot of people don't know how to say no. That's the difference between New York City.
It's a final stage. His warning anyone willing to listen. Diddy's circle is coming for him. Every glance in the rearview mirror feels like a jolt of adrenaline. In his voice, you can hear the weight of fear. He talks of late-night calls from strange numbers and headlights trailing him just a little too long, turning each drive into a gauntlet of nerves. He insists courthouse appearances are stage productions designed to send messages. It isn't just showmanship. It's a reminder that no number of marshals, lawyers, or guard can shield him completely. He recalls spotting familiar faces from Diddy's old crew outside the courthouse, standing at that calculated distance, visible enough to be recognized, distant enough to dodge security. The message...
You didn't fall within one of the exceptions. What now happens when you've been convicted of 2 of those particular charges? That's what the judge is going to be looking at. And again, right now, considering it sounds like statements that the defense made, essentially admitting that Sean Combs is somebody who has had personal problems, but they were doing so to try and argue that he should not...
...says, was obvious. Turn up the heat. Keep him sweating. Force a mistake. The atmosphere he describes isn't merely tense. It's suffocating. Gene calls a courthouse a pressure chamber, and the city beyond doesn't feel safer. He warns that anyone who thinks Diddy's influence ended with his arrest is fooling themselves. Even in county-issued sweats, locked inside a Brooklyn detention center, Gene claims the mogul is still pulling strings. Prosecutors frame him as a once-glittering star-turned-orchestrator of a criminal machine, a man who used handlers, fixers, and loyalists to keep the empire running whether he was in Miami or behind bars. But Gene insists it runs deeper, that Diddy is still directing moves, leveraging his network to silence witnesses, spook former allies, and bury damaging truths. The courts, too, have signaled unease. Rumors swirl about witness intimidation, and at least one alleged victim has vanished before she could testify. When prosecutors told the judge they couldn't even track down her lawyer, the tension was electric. These aren't ordinary disappearances. They look like vanishings engineered when fortunes are at stake and the people involved know exactly how to erase problems. Gene isn't the only one sounding alarms. Prosecutors themselves have flagged suspicious activity, pointing to Diddy's communications from jail, 3-way calls and unauthorized contacts that suggest lines are still open, enough to keep the FBI circling and enough to make Gene believe the danger is very real. It feels like every time this case takes a new turn, something slips through the cracks. A witness backs out, a file vanishes, or a crucial detail gets buried. The paranoia isn't just hanging over Gene Deal. Defense lawyers are pressing the judge to rein in what they call an overreaching prosecution, while prosecutors argue they are racing against time before more witnesses scatter or disappear. What's becoming clear is that this isn't simply a fight for Diddy's freedom. It's a battle to keep the machinery of silence alive, no matter how many locks and guards are stacked around him. And where there's a Diddy story, there are always whispers. This time, it's tunnels. Real tunnels, if you believe the chatter. Beneath the estates and compounds where he allegedly hosted his infamous late-night gatherings, people claim there were hidden passageways. Not just idle gossip, old magazine features, grainy Polaroids, and even sketches resurface every time his name makes headlines. Back in the day, tales about secret corridors linking the Playboy Mansion to the homes of Jack Nicholson and Warren Beatty were the stuff
I can't wait. I can't wait for everybody to find out what's really been going on in the...
of Hollywood lore. Then attention shifted to Diddy's L.A. estate. The more outrageous claims suggest there was a passage stretching toward Michael Jackson's property, maybe even to the Playboy Mansion itself. Some outlets insist the whole thing's a hoax, pointing out that a supposed CNN screenshot confirming the tunnels was a clumsy fake. But for every debunking, another supposed piece of evidence appears. A faded blueprint, a half-buried photo, or an ex-staffer swearing there were stairs that led somewhere off-limits. It's the sort of rumor that won't die, resurfacing whenever scandal strikes. And it sparks a darker question. If he really went to such lengths to hide activity underground, what else was hidden behind those walls? The federal raids already turned up shelves of oils and unexplained tapes, enough to blur the line between truth and conspiracy. Suddenly, the thought of a concrete escape route under manicured hedges doesn't sound so far-fetched. True or not, the tunnel stories line up neatly with the themes that have always shadowed Diddy: control, secrecy, and intimidation. Meanwhile, Gene Deal isn't folding. Once the bodyguard who kept the boss safe, he's now the loudest voice tearing at the myth.
The things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed my life.
Shift has made him a marked man, not just in Diddy's eyes, but in the wider circle of bad boy veterans nervously watching subpoenas land on their doorsteps. There's money at stake, sure, but the danger runs deeper: reputations, family fortunes, and the unspoken pact of loyalty that once held the empire together. Gene has even pointed to one of the industry's most sensitive wounds: the claim that Diddy orchestrated the sale of Biggie's publishing rights while his mother was on her deathbed, with Wayne Barrow and Mark Pitt sliding paperwork across tables behind closed doors. To Gene, it wasn't just about contracts or royalties. It was proof of how far the operation would go to protect itself, even at the expense of those it was built on. It wasn't about Wallace's kids or Big's family. Gene insists the publishing deals were designed for the men still breathing, the ones who stayed close long enough to profit. Nobody in that circle wants the depth of the truth exposed. And hovering just behind it all is the most dangerous rumor of them all: that Diddy's reach wasn't limited to boardrooms or late-night parties, but stretched into the territory of organized violence. In the Keith B case, filings repeatedly tie his name to the drama, 47 times in a single transcript. The detail is so pointed it forces a question: was Diddy the man quietly pulling strings, offering millions to settle vendettas?
He cornered me. And then he asked me, with his arm up, he asked me, "How you doing?" I'm kind of like, wow, this is, what the heck? Very uncomfortable. And then he rubbed his hand down my breast. He said, "If you need anything at all, you let me know."
During the East Coast-West Coast War? Or was he just another spectator in the smoky backrooms where deals and grudges collided? Prosecutors, journalists, and filmmakers keep letting the accusations circulate, while Diddy and his lawyers respond with little more than flat denials. The trap seems to tighten, but if Gene Deal is right, the walls are trick walls, lined with two-way glass. Every time it looks like Diddy's boxed in, stories emerge that suggest he still has eyes everywhere: in the streets, outside the courthouse, and in the hidden corners where friends flip and enemies cut deals. Witnesses vanish, prosecutors stumble trying to track down key testimony, and the same question keeps returning. Are people getting cold feet, or is something far more deliberate happening behind the scenes? The spectacle outside court does little to hide the seriousness inside. Cameras captured Christian Combs stripping off his shirt.
And her attorney has said that she may not be willing to come and testify anyway, so be interesting. Okay.
And cranking out push-ups on the courthouse steps as though it were a stage show instead of federal case. Gene scoffs at it, calling it clownish, warning that stunts like that only tempt the judge to come down harder when the hammer finally falls. It's a vivid reminder of how thin the line is between bravado and panic, and how each move can backfire. Meanwhile, the witnesses keep folding or disappearing. Prosecutors scramble to hold the case together. Defense attorneys pound their chests, and the public is left piecing together meaning from half-buried headlines. One of the most critical accusers has gone dark. The prosecution can't reach her. Even her lawyer won't answer phone. No one knows if she'll ever appear, even under subpoena. For critics, this is proof of intimidation at work. For defenders, it's reason to question the entire case. Either way, the pattern refuses to be ignored. Fear, silence, and the lingering suspicion that anyone who knows too much is a way of vanishing. And then there's the indictment itself, which reads more like the script of a crime. crime series, an illegal document, marathon parties drenched in excess, a criminal network propped up by handlers, security, and loyal assistants who would do anything to shield their boss. The raids on his estates uncovered caches of weapons with scratched serials, mountains of tapes and files, and enough bottles of oil to fill a warehouse. Each discovery only sharpens the questions. How did this machine keep running unchecked for so long? And what finally made it start to crack? As for Gene, his credibility remained contested. To some, his chasing clout. To others, his a rare insider willing to break hip-hop's code of silence. But what no one denies is this.
Filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done.
Every time he speaks, the air in the courtroom shifts, and another lock seems to click shut around secrets long buried. 4 years. Diddy lived behind a curtain, and when Gene calls out familiar names, Stevie J, Mays, and the entire constellation of bad boy veterans, it isn't just bitterness spilling out. He's pointing out that nearly everyone tied to that empire has something at stake if the real story ever sees daylight. As Gene says, if you don't understand what a gangster is, then you're only pretending. That fine line between theatrics and true menace has always been fragile.
In the book, Porter allegedly recounts discovering and making copies of the tapes that Diddy made of himself having with young boys that he was managing, including an alleged tape involving an 18-year-old.
And now the fallout is finally catching up. The pattern is as old as the game itself. Pay off the first witness, intimidate the second, disappear the third, then drown the rest in denial and misdirection. The press amplifies it. The internet turns whispers into memes. And those at the center, like Gene, are left carrying the burden until they either get paid or get silenced. The difference this time is the scale. With Diddy staring down the possibility of life behind bars, racketeering charges hanging over him, and lawsuits peeling back layers of his empire, the machinery of intimidation isn't just spinning, it's fighting for survival. And beneath the headlines linger the questions that no one has answered. Where did the tapes go? Who's shifting the money now that the empire is splintering? Is there really a tunnel, whether literal or symbolic, that still funnels secrets out and keeps witnesses running scared? Every fresh revelation, every disappearing act, and every nervous glance from Gene